All right, hopefully this works. Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. I was speaking to myself this entire time. Apparently, my internet connection just went dead. Okay, let's get into it. WoTC's new OGL. The wording, where it seems like it's going, where it feels like Hasbro, the overlords of and owners of Wizards of the Coast and the open gaming license and the changes to it, seems like bad tidings. The fact that they feel like Dungeons and Dragons is under monetized and so on, it's completely terrible. Feels like it sucks. Guess what? I think this is a good thing. All right, so believe do me the honor of allowing me to explain to you why I think this is absolutely great for the hobby. All right, and let's get into it. First, let me drop a little intro here, and well, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining me on this live podcast show where on a daily deep dive we talk about various subjects and okay, there we go. Thank you, Dead Man. Yeah, Uh, listen, guys. Um, things are changing in the RPG community with Dungeons and Dragons being our pivotal um, role playing game that has been the icon of role playing for really generations now. And as terrible as people feel, as dramatic of a change for third party creators as it will be, honestly, again, I think this is a good thing. Much like the Dungeon 23 challenge is starting to sweep the community, I think these changes are good. I feel like these third party creators um, allow me to set the stage. Let me go back a little bit. Um, one of the problems that we have in our role playing community is is comfort. It's it is a sense of righteousness and an issue that society has in general, that when you get something and you get it for free, that you deserve it for free, and that's not the case. Let me give you some examples. Maybe there's a neighbor that, oh, I don't know, um, they have a big yard and they let all the kids play in the yard. Maybe they sled in the wintertime, or they're able to play any kind of ball game in this yard. And that neighbor has allowed this to happen for years. Maybe some kids grew up playing ball next to this big yard of the neighbor. Neighbor moves out, someone comes in, the new neighbor comes in and says, "Get the hell off my lawn. Take your ball and move, because I don't want these kids playing on my yard." And all the kids fold their arms and pout and go, "But that's unfair." Let me give you another example. There's a road where everyone speeds and they go 20, 30 miles, kilometers over the speed limit down this road for years and years and years. And finally, a police officer is parked in the middle of the road, starts handing out tickets, and everyone folds their arms and goes, "This is stupid." Unfortunately, we have gotten into hey Mike. Unfortunately, we've gotten into the habit of receiving something for free. Dungeons and Dragons feels like it belongs to all of us. And as a community, we feel like, well, we are a role playing community. It should belong to us. The actual answer to that is no. Now, role playing games, yes, belong to us as a community. Dungeons and Dragons, uh, it's an intellectual property. It belongs to someone. And unfortunately, these growing pains, as a person of a certain age, I've seen this happen dozens of times. dozens of times. Hello, everyone in the live chat. For those who don't know, the show goes live 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for all of you creatives, community, and kind folks out there. So please tune in. Usually, one half the show, I present to you my argument for the way things could be, should be, are, or whatever. And then the last half of the show is everyone rips me a new one. So please stick around for that part of it. But if not, yeah, that's it. So the fact of the matter is, whether Hasbro is making a smart decision or not, it that part of it doesn't matter. The community itself, if we are stronger than whatever changes Dungeons and Dragons makes, which means we take our football and we leave the field, and Hasbro's waiting there going like, well, I've got snacks. Why is no one sitting around? Um, Maybe that's the case, right? And we make this, businesses do not listen to words that people say. They listen to dollars and cents. They listen to money. And in today's world, attention is money. Information is money. And where we spend our money, where we place our attention, is where money flows, at least in a lot of big businesses' eyes. And so, therefore, we don't need Dungeons and Dragons to have a full, healthy role playing community at all. But I also feel like we needed to be taught this lesson. There are, as I mentioned at the end of the show yesterday, there are plenty of communities around the world, I'm sure, where there's a small community and a big business moves in. They get cheap land, they hire everyone in the town, everyone works at one business. When that business decides to fold up and leave, or they go out of business, or they move overseas, or they find some other technique to make things better and they don't need everyone, they lay everybody off, and the city, those small towns will shrink and get depressed because they've been relying on literally one avenue of income, one avenue of community. I know I'm using that word community too often, of belonging, one avenue of feeling like they are recognized for the work that they do. And while this may hurt our feelings emotionally, while this may fracture the community somewhat, and while this can really hit some really huge third party content creators in the wallet, I think we needed it. I think we needed a wake up call to go, oh, you know what? Yeah, it doesn't really belong to us. It belongs to, a CEO and a council and um, with stockholders and those kind of things. So I'm going to get into the live chat here. Those of you who are not subscribed, please do so, and you can also join in live beginning 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So. Deadman says the OGL is going through 3 different CEOs of Hasbro. Absolutely, and who's to say that they looked at the bottom line and went, "It's working," right? Yesterday I mentioned that, which side of the fence do you fall on when, in terms of how much money third party content creators are making versus what Hasbro is pulling in? So let's talk about Critical Role. Critical Role, one time there was a big hoopla about them making, like, bringing in a revenue of like $14 million. That doesn't include what they're spending it on, but that what they made, and it was like 14 million plus or minus something, maybe a year ago or 2 years ago or something. I don't remember. But whatever the case may be, Hasbro probably looks at that as, wait a minute, they're making $14 million and we didn't get a cut of that. Critical Role, on the other hand, is going, you would have never sponsored what we're doing. You would have never hired us. You would have never written the show. You wouldn't hire voice actors. Nothing we've done would you have sponsored. So you would have never made that $14 million. And so, yeah, yeah, that's the issue, right? I mean, a third party content creator can go, Dark Sun doesn't exist. I'm going to make Bright Moon, a thinly veiled version of Dark Sun, and make $10 million from a Kickstarter because it's so brilliantly written and marketed and everything. WoTC is going to look at it and go, well, that's our money. We were going to do something like that. And we're all around the community looking at each other like, no, you weren't. You had plenty of time to work on. No, you weren't. Okay. Anyway, let's get into to our co-host here. JP says, "Oh boy, hate to admit it, by hating Wizards of the Coast is by hating Wizards of the Coast is so deep and detailed that it gives me energy." Listen, I I don't fall that way, but yes, there's some content creators out there, man, that are fueled to the hilt with this. Anyway, to continue on what Jared is saying, I wish there were more hours in a day to be angry at Wizards of the Coast. Don't even mention Games Workshop. Ooh, I think you just set fire to somebody. That's a burn right there. Air Dragon says so. The lesson from 4E wasn't enough, so WoTC wants to repeat it in a much worse way. And Eric Dragon mentioned yesterday about Paizo. Paizo right now could literally do the exact same thing they did before. Oh, Pathfinder First Edition, when they went to 4E, they could do Pathfinder 5.1 or something, whatever, which would be hilarious. Hilarious. Mike says WoTC has slowly become more corporate focused. I would guess, and I don't have any information, I would guess that's because Hasbro, which owns Wizards of the Coast, wants to have more amenable, would like to have more amenable employees work at Wizards of the Coast, if that makes sense, right? So some people just fold their arms and say, "I'm out." And those individuals, the Keith Bakers, the Monty Cooks, they're like, I can have a whole career on my own. I don't need to work here, right? And their names have already become synonymous with products as it is. So I agree with you. Anyway, Mike goes on to say, yes, they're a business and always have been. But let's be clear, D&D has been around so long that the OGLs of the past are enough to make our own game. And as many have already. Heck, like Questing Beast has said, we've been homebrewing since the beginning. Absolutely. I just feel like this hammer, instead of Wizards of the Coast using a scalpel, meaning being very careful about the products they do, the art, the people they work with. For example, Tyranny of Dragons was commissioned through Cobalt Press to create that. And when they basically came out with 5th edition, they were like, "We're not finished writing a book. Hey, Cobalt, dial phone, talk on phone." I know you young people don't use talk on phones. They talked on the rotary phone and went like, "Hey, could you help us make an adventure?" And Cobalt was like, "Sure, we love Dungeons and Dragons, right?" And but I think we needed the cold water splashed in our face. And just as Questing Beast has mentioned, that we've been homebrewing since the beginning, and we can continue to do so. I think us, on bended knee, looking up at Dungeons and Dragons, going, please produce a product that I like. Instead, splash cold water on our face. We get to walk away and go, "I'm going to do it on my own," and I hope someone does. I really do. I think that we needed this to separate our emotional baggage from the corporate entity that it is. That we can hold on to the love we have for Dungeons and Dragons and a role playing game as a community, as a thought prospect, but not the corporation. And it's a shame, but I think we need it. I think we need to go hit the brakes. The record scratch. Oh, whoa, wait. They do own it. They can sue us. They can shut us down when I focus my entire company into the good graces of one specific intellectual property. Sorry. Wow. You can tell I'm not feeling too good, but talking and trying to be active and stuff like that, my enthusiasm overcomes my uh, the stuffiness in my head. Sorry about that. All right. Bellner says, "Wow, so happy to see you here again on YouTube. Has it been a year or two?" It's been a year and a couple of months, but it feels more like 2. Mike says, "This is definitely an Iron Man 3 situation. We make our own enemies." Yep, WoTC is responsible for the rise of Paizo. This will simply repeat that process. Well, and I'll double down on that one. This isn't just going to get Paizo to jump in, or a similarly large and focused company. Right now, there are people poised to do this across the board. I can think of about 4 or 5 off the top of my head right now that I guarantee you have been thinking about this on the down low and probably now are like pushing this further up in the air, like, ooh, maybe we should get into making our own system. I mentioned Matt Koval, Kobo Press, Ghostfire Gaming, um, and there's plenty others out there. And I should have, I should have. I'm gonna do a search later on in this stream for some really big third party creators out there that are like, yeah, we can do our own thing, and some have already done it. Maybe their games aren't as big. Questing Beast has Knave and Maze Rats out there. Um, Runehammer has the ICRPG. There's I'm trying to think of not just OSR games, but closer to fifth edition. Of course, Level Up, Advanced Fifth Edition through End World. Frog God Games, thank you. Green Ronin. Are you kidding me? Frog God Games isn't thinking about their own thing. We have DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics that exists, and I don't think it would take too much of a tweaking for someone to go to the SRD that exists right now. Thank you, Z. Um, and basically, from the bottom up, rewrite fifth edition, make tweaks to it that correspond to that company's or certain people's type of play style, whether it's more high fantasy or gritty or somewhere in between. And yeah, Goodman Games, thank you, Goodman Games, thank you there, Pumpkin Ghost. Um, yeah. Anyway, Belner says the biggest mistake WoTC made with 5e was printing their rules in books that they said they sold to all of us. Yeah. I've been running PHB only, players handbook only sessions and campaigns since Tasha's came out. And exactly, as a matter of fact, I don't know if anyone else remembers this, but during the next D&D next playtest, they were talking about making the game modular. So old school guys like myself remember modules basically as adventures. All right, Mike, have a great one. Have a great day. Gotta go if you gotta go, man. But great to have you here. Always brilliant. But modules used to be adventures, and then in the D&D next playtest, they were talking about making fifth edition modular. So you would have modular rule sets you would overlay over the base rules, the base engine, basically rolling a d20 and adding or subtracting modifiers, and using advantage and disadvantage, and you would have a rule set you could put over it. They kind of dropped that very quickly, but now people have been playing this a long time. I think people could do this very easily. And like I was saying, my argument for this, the anger that everyone is feeling, for me, is a good thing, because what I feel like, instead of us folding our arms and pouting, I know the little kitty, the little kitty, I'm holding my breath and pouting, that initial feeling is going to go away, and then you're going to get energy, creative energy, going, what can I do now to support my business, to support the community, to support my creativity without using anything that they have. Now, I'm going to get into OGL and SRD in a moment and give some physical, as a small pub creator myself, to express to you guys some of the issues that are in it, because it's not as clear cut as people think. But I feel like you can type right now, you can go ahead and Google role-playing game open gaming licenses for other games that aren't Dungeons and Dragons, and there's plenty of them out there. Blades in the Dark, the Cortex system, which I'm going to, Deadman says about Margaret Weis Productions and their Cortex system. The Cypher system has an OGL. It's a little bit funky, but there's the Miskatonic repository for Call of Cthulhu that kind of has an OGL, but they have their own, I'll say, sales pathway. But there's a lot of independent publishers out there, third party publishers that have their own OGLs, and you can go out there and take your things. And then the whole OSR has been open, for generations now, for at least a generation, if not more. Yeah. Hey, John and Drew, you have a great one. Yep, no problem, no problem. I know these go a little bit long, and it's a little longy talky for a lot of people, but I like doing them. So I have my own niche, my own corner of the interwebs. So no problem. Um, Wayne says, I still view the campaign books as campaigns, still just adventures, though longer and deeper. A campaign is multiple adventures based in the same world that affect that world. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you're just stacked on each other. Zamar says, here's the thing. The base game, like all tabletop RPGs, is modular. That's what homebrewing is in the first place. No, of course, of course, and I think we just need to realize not only have we already been doing it, not only can we continue to do it, we don't need permission from fifth edition, from WoTC, from Hasbro to do it. So let me get a little bit into the weeds. Allow me to present to you the conundrum with the current OGL and this new OGL that they're going to release and the SRD. So, for those who don't know, I am a small press publisher, and I have been hired to do writing for other companies. I've been hired through N-World and paid for some writing for them. I've also been hired through Onyx Path Gaming and worked on a monster book for them, and of course my own individual things. And it's small, whatever. So there's something called the Open Gaming License. An Open Gaming License is a license that individuals like myself are obligated to put at the back of a book if that book coincides with the rules of fifth edition. Now, while I say coincides with the rules, sometimes the rules within fifth edition are needed to express what independent writers are writing about. That's where something called the SRD comes in. The SRD, and it's available right now. You can download it for free. Both the OGL, which is legalese, and the SRD. Now, the OGL will list in the little fine print named intellectual identifiers that you cannot use. So any proper noun, capitalized noun, you cannot use in your products. So displacer beasts are in there, beholders are in there, mind flayers and illithids are in there. That's why you don't see them in third-party products. Now, some third-party creators will create a duplicate of a thinly veiled version of the thing, but they're not allowed to use that thing. I believe rust monsters, gelatinous cubes, and mimics are in the SRD. Now, the OGL it's basically every named wizard, every proper named character from any book series or anything. You cannot use any proper names. So, Tensor's floating disk you cannot use, but the floating disk spell does exist. This is where the SRD comes in, the system reference document. The system reference document is a 350-ish page PDF, and it has all the rules, stat blocks, rules of the game. You can play 5th edition just using the SRD. It has no fluff in it whatsoever, and it lists all the material that we are allowed as a third-party creator to copy and paste into our documents. Of course, you're not allowed to do it. We can't copy and paste the entire document, put my name on it, and then resell it, but we can. And the reason for that is, in my third-party document, I have the right to mention that, let's say, an NPC has a magic missile. I can reference a magic missile without legal recourse, but I cannot put the rules for the spell magic missile as written unless I copy and paste it from the SRD into my product. And if I do that, I now am under the OGL. That sounds funky, but here's another thing that you may have noticed and going, scratched your chin, like makes you go, right? So the SRD does not have all of the feats. It has one feat. It's a grappling feat. It doesn't have all of the backgrounds. There's one background in it called the Acolyte. As a third-party creator, you can make your own feats and you can make your own backgrounds, but you're not able to cut and paste out of the player's handbook. You can only use what's in the SRD. And the SRD has one background, which is the Acolyte. That's why third-party creators are like, well, if one D&D is attaching feats to backgrounds and they never did it before, can we legally do that? And the answer technically is no, you cannot, because that does not exist in the SRD. The SRD has not been updated. So the way monster stat blocks are laid out, I can copy and paste that into my own product. Let's say putting a rust monster in and an ogre and an ancient red dragon, and copy and paste that stat block into my document through an adventure using the SRD, and I'm able to use the SRD because of the OGL. Okay? But if I say, well, I'm going to separate myself from 5th edition and do my own thing, if I make a stat block that looks exactly the same, I'm breaking the law. If I copy and paste anything out of that SRD 350-page document and put it in mine and do not credit the OGL and do not credit Dungeons and Dragons, I'm breaking the law. So it's a fine line, meaning that you cannot copyright how dice are rolled and rules, but they can copyright how they are written. So saving throws, advantage and disadvantage, and all those things individually amongst themselves can't be copywritten, but as they are laid out in the rule system, they could sue you. And there's some third party products where I cringe a little bit. I go, you're riding the line. Oh, you don't want to do that. That's why sometimes you'll see people, you'll see some creators, they won't use the word Dungeons and Dragons because it belongs to someone else. We use 5e or the world's most popular role playing game, right? It's a legal thread that needs to be threaded. For example, Wizards of the Coast has basically acknowledged but never used the term 5th edition. The entire RPG community has been using 5th edition to differentiate itself. Cam, hey, what's up? But 5th edition isn't an official moniker of Dungeons and Dragons. It has never been. They don't 5th Dungeons and Dragons, while internally and talking to the community, may have used like 3.5 and that kind of thing, but it's always been called Dungeons and Dragons. The additions nomenclature we add to it is a creation of our own. We spawn that. That does not exist as a corporate meaning. So when they say, well, one D&D is going to be the only D&D, really what they're doubling down is saying, reminding us that, yeah, it's always just been Dungeons and Dragons. It always been. Yeah, and AGR says, I remember reading that. Others dice systems can be used, but you can't word it the same way as the original author. Pretty funky. Yes. So again, here's threading that needle. I can reference rolling a d20 and using it to I'm trying to say things without saying using 5th edition's wording. So, wow, this is difficult. All right. I can write rules that talk about rolling a d20, adding and subtracting modifiers, or rolling a d20 and using the higher value or the lower value. But the minute I start talking about attack bonus, saving throw, advantage, disadvantage, armor class, hit points, the minute I start talking about that in a manner in which it closely aligns 5th edition, the closer they get to being able to sue me. Now, I'm sure all of you are going, well, how does the OSR exist? Well, the OSR exists because there is an OGL that allows them to use it, and many old OSR games don't exactly do armor class, hit points, advantage, disadvantage in the exact same manner. And as long as it's a little bit different, and you're describing how to roll a d20, how to roll 2d6, how to roll a dice pool, or whatever, as long as it's differentiated just a little bit, which is how we forget that the Cipher system by Monty Cook is a d20 game. It isn't Dungeons and Dragons, but it still uses a d20. It adds and subtracts modifiers, but it's not related to 5th edition or Dungeons and Dragons at all, because he uses different wordings, he uses different manners, different literary navigation that separates itself from other D20 systems. And yeah, it sounds funky. I mean, right now, legally, N-World created Level Up Advanced 5th Edition and rewrote the SRD from the ground up. They from the ground up rewrote all the stat blocks, rewrote all the rules. I apologize. I don't have a cough button. So it's a weird needle to thread, because if for some strange reason, and I don't think they can legally do it, but if for some strange reason Hasbro through WoTC says we are removing every OGL, all of them, and we're going to have one where you must sign for it. You must tell us how much money you're making. You must tell us what products you're making, which is where this new OGL is coming from. Then that would make every other product that's out there illegal. It would be like you guys have to burn the books. That physically and even strategically isn't possible, and would be quite hilariously stupid. But could they do it? Yeah, they could do it. Is there legal precedence for something like that happening? Yes. Products have been released to the world. Millions of products have been released to the world where they've been telling those people that made those products, you must remove them off the shelves and burn it, destroy it. So now Zamara says, I never thought of it that way. I assume that they were just trying to avoid losing players due to their regime change. I think that's the wording. Okay, so the new changes to the OGL state that if you are a content creator, in the responsibility has been, please don't steal our rules. Here is an SRD or system reference document that you can use if you want to use our rules. So instead of stealing, here we're going to give you the rules that you can use. And then at the back, sometimes in the beginning, but most people at the back of the book, here is the 1-page, 6-font legalese that you must place in the book to tell everyone that you are a third-party creator. And so people place that at the back of the book. Now they're saying, no, instead of just doing that, we want you to sign for it. We want to know who you are, what you're creating to use the OGL. And is that data mining? Of course it is, because information and attention is power nowadays. So they want to know what you're creating, what time frame, how many, what your reach is. Do you have 1,000 people who want your product? 5,000 people? Are you doing a Kickstarter? Are you using Indiegogo? Do you have your own website where you're selling your products? They want to know all this information, and they want a direct link to content creators. Is that good or bad? So I'll give you the good side of this before I get into the into our co-host's comments here. The good side of that, of data mining, is, well, information. For example, the DMs Guild, they know what buys and sell. I mean, they know the sales figures on the DMs Guild, the downloads, the 5 stars, the 4 stars, the comments, and that's all real-time information. And they could recruit from that. So when Cobalt Press tells them we're having Tome of Beasts 3 and it's going to sell 50,000 copies at $65 a physical book or something, they could go, WoTC could say, damn, we need to work with them on our next project. They could hire great writers. They could recruit great artists into their fold. AI art set aside. This could be a good thing. Another good thing could be partnering. Hey, we at Wizards of the Coast will never make this book, but you will. So if we do a little profit sharing, you give us a little bit, we will then promote your book through our reach, which is huge. Dungeons and Dragons has always been well, except for when I think during the Pathfinder first edition era, but for the most part has been worlds above any third party creator. They could partner up and sell through them and say, hey, we love what you're doing. We'll promote you, but we'll do some profit sharing. We'll take 20%, but you can reach 10 times as many people. Instead of 20,000, you can reach 200,000 people around the world, right? Which might be a good trade-off. It's like selling products through Walmart. Walmart says, we'll take a bigger cut, or Amazon, same way. We'll take a bigger cut, but you'll reach 10 times as many people. So the cut doesn't hurt as much with the wider reach. The terrible thing about that is they could say, oh, what product are you making? You're making Fatal Part 2? If you guys know that Fatal's a highly sexualized role-playing game or whatever, they could shut a Kickstarter down and go, look, I understand that your mature-only Dark Sun equivalent, Bright Moon, is going to sell 500,000 copies. I don't know if that would ever be possible. Maybe 50,000 is probably closer to it. And you're about to have this $2 million Kickstarter plus because everyone's looking for it, but it's filled with adult themes, like slavery and brutality and starvation and torture and sexual depravity, with a big label that says mature content only. But even so, Hasbro, I could see Hasbro going, we don't want our name related to that at all. Tell them to cut it. Tell them to kill it. That would be horrible. So our co-host here is saying, Warcraft 3 Reforged had the user license where custom maps were property of Blizzard. Everybody hated it. Got to be careful. Yeah. Even today, people don't realize that everything on the DM's Guild belongs to WoTC. Everything on the DM's Guild, every word written, every piece of artwork, every layout belongs to them. Yeah. Z says, also figured they were trying to avoid a 4E fiasco by doing what Gygax did and saying basically that anyone not playing the base game isn't playing D&D next new edition. Yeah, it's people forget that Gygax was sue heavy at the time because there were so many duplicates coming out, like other role-playing games, and kind of being like a Dungeons and Dragons one-off. But it's there. But you have the right to sue if someone is stealing your property. Cameron says, I heard that the OGL is bunk, no one needs it. Yes and no. Basically, no, you don't really need an OGL, but you have to diverge from Dungeons and Dragons enough that it doesn't resemble 5th edition any longer. Right? And that can be a little bit difficult if everyone's still going, we need backgrounds, we need feats, we need, right? It's the equivalent of like, okay, let me give this to you very simply. Magic missile spell, very common. D4, 3 missiles, shoot them out, whatever. I can reference magic missile in my own document and not get sued. I can say, this NPC has a wand of magic missiles. When the players step into the room, statues come out of the walls and they shoot magic missiles at the people. If I use the word magic missile, I'm fine. I'm referencing something that does exist, but it's fair use. It would be like me referencing Superman. Hey, that guy's like a Superman. I can reference that because it does exist in pop culture and whatnot. If I write down the rules for magic missile and it closely aligns to what is in the SRD from Wizards of the Coast, I am using their product, which means I'm using the OGL, right? And that's a fine line because then I would have to rewrite what magic missile means. Then it means I would have to change it, twist it just enough. How the OSR is able to do it is they do it by deleting rules. So OSR rule sets tend to be very simple, rather than explaining all of the variations on how you cannot do a thing. For example, have I don't know if any of you have read the floating disk spell recently, but it's very convoluted because it's very restrictive. But in an OSR game, if they just go rule set, they go, you can make a floating disk that floats 3 feet above the ground and follows you around the dungeon, and that's it. That's not using the SRD, right? It's kind of weird. It's kind of like it's avoiding through deletion or non-complication. Yeah, it's very weird. Z says, while you're gone, I went crazy enough to want to fix Fatal. Those were dark times. Glad you're back. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Yeah, Wayne says, I believe Arneson was the actual greater creator of the game. Gygax took what he was doing and decided they could make money on it. Just like Ray Kroc with McDonald's. Ray Kroc took it from the McDonald's brothers or something, and then made more money by taking the business of McDonald's hamburgers and yeah, it's a whole thing. Now we tend to, unfortunately, in our community, we deride big business and big companies. I make the argument that we're a bunch of pansy ass hypocrites. If somebody today took your favorite character, your campaign setting, your world, your took your recorded games you put online, took your notebook that you wrote all your notes in for your various campaigns, and made $50 million on it, I guarantee you would sue the pants off that person and want to get that money back. Right? Let's not act like big business bad, grassroots community good. Listen, I'm not as I don't have my head in the sand. If someone gave me the opportunity to make millions or tens of millions of dollars from something I made, or someone stole something from me that's my creation and decide to make that money off of me and my creation, I wouldn't go, oh, that's just my loss. Oh well, do 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 do. No, hell no. Um, Listen, if someone gave you the keys and said, "Hey, you've got the 57th floor of this office building, and we're going to open up a corporate center based solely around your property, and we're going to give you a $200 million a year bonus to promote and produce products for your creation," you would jump on it. Let's don't act like we wouldn't want to also become money moguls based on our creative ideas. Now, I am not telling you wouldn't lose your soul. I probably would, because the money would make me go like, ooh. I'd grow one of those mustaches with the and get the a can of that like grease just to curl the ends of it. Oh hell's yet no, I wouldn't do that. But business is business, right? We understand that, and despite the fact that when business crosses creativity, it gets a little funky. It feels invasive, icky. Yeah. Kara's like, green is fun. do 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 do. But yeah, I I think we're doing ourselves a disservice when we're just like, Hasbro's wrong and WoTC's stupid because they're big business. They want to make more money. Because that's what business is. Business is about making money. It's not about, what is the term? If you are if you're sitting still, you're falling behind. I believe it's not. Yeah, and like AG says, it's not money, but the love of money, or so I've heard. Yeah, it's I would relate this to your favorite mom and pop store, restaurant, whatever in your neighborhood. Some people are happy enough with their place and goal in life to run their mom and pop pizza place and make enough money to help the community, make enough money for themselves and be comfortable, and that's it. They're not trying to franchise. They're not trying to have a glowing website. They're not trying to have um, 15 food trucks driving around. They're happy doing what they're doing, and some third party creators are happy doing what they're doing. But you got to remember, Part of business is if you're sitting still, you're falling behind. If you stand still, everyone else is moving past you. Take a look at all the virtual tabletops that have been coming out. If you sit still, somebody's coming up behind you. Owlbear Rodeo, Astral. I'm trying to think of some other than Fantasy Grounds and Roll20. There's just somebody else out there that's trying to move ahead of you, and so business to advance, it costs money. To let me be frank with you. Enworld paid me handsomely to help write for them. And I was a tiny cog in a huge machine. There were like 30 of us trying to write Level Up Advanced 5th Edition. They paid on time, handsomely, and were hand in hand working with us the entire time. Brilliant. They always deliver a product on time. They pay on time. It's beautiful. It is beautiful. So they have established a relationship with their writers and creators and artists that is second to none. I think Matt Colville does the same thing. Pays top dollar, pays on time, works hand in hand. And when I say hand in hand, a good leader trusts their creators and goes, "Oh, you know what you're doing. I'm going to leave you alone." So let's get back to our co-host here before we get out of here. Dungeon Fog. Thank you, Z. Dungeon Fog's another one. Virtual tabletop. If Roll20 sits still, if Fantasy Ground sits still, there's somebody nipping at their heels. There's always somebody out there. Yep. Yeah, Z says, I will have to agree, sadly. I'm trying to be honest. I'm not saying that I'm right about thinking this way. I just have to be honest with how we're thinking. Foundry, thank you there, Pumpkin. Foundry says so. But Z says, sorry, I will have to agree, sadly. We all value our work to different degrees, but we all value it. Yeah. We may not want to profit off our work, but we also don't want others to profit off our backs. And that's the key, right? We don't, if someone made let's say a fan made a poster of, let's say we did a live play of a bunch of characters and a fan said, "Hey, I decided to make these giant posters of your characters because I loved what you did online." We'd go, "Man, thanks. Man, those posters are great." They sent us a poster and maybe they sold them for $10 a piece or something and made a couple of bucks here and there. We go, "Yeah, whatever. That's awesome. Thank you for, you made a big ass glossy poster or a standee like the ones behind me for my character for free and you sent that to me. Thank you so much," right? But if somebody's out there going, "Ooh, I can steal all this," right? I Critical Role, I'm gonna steal everything they made. Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean? Cameron says, "Who was that lady who took over TSR and stopped all gaming at work? Also, did they ever release a system under her reign?" What was her name? I know who you're talking about. Damn. Someone's gonna have to look that up. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, there was a point in time where they were just like, no TSR, no gaming. It was crazy. So FinFan7 says the difference is the company already makes crap tons of money and attacks people who make $5 on their hobby time. All right. FinFan's not wrong. Let me be the devil's advocate here. I need to tell this story a little bit. I'm a fan of the History Channel, and part of the History Channel, at one point they ran a series about the men who made America. They were these big business people, and they talk about some big business, the Hershey Company and the Heinz Ketchup or Heinz Condiment Company, and talked about all these things. And if you ever watch those shows, we think of capitalism as everyone's starting at a starting line and running a race. And the best businesses win the race by running faster than everybody else. That's one method of doing it. The other method is getting on the starting line, gun goes off, you start running, and you have a brick or a baseball bat, and you start hitting kneecaps to make sure I don't have to be fastest. I just got to be ahead of everybody else, right? And part of what in the capitalist area is not just being the best, but making sure no one else dares go after your monopoly. And part of that is taking $5 from the person who's trying to nip at your heels. Part of that is making an exclusive contract that prevents businesses coming at your heels to advertise in the same place you're advertising. In the Heinz ketchup analogy, Heinz ketchup used glass bottles to put their ketchup and mustard and stuff in. And what they did is they bought up all the glass bottles so no one else could buy glass bottles to put their rival condiments in them. Hershey did the same thing, trying to buy up all the milk chocolate so people couldn't do it. Is it effed up? Yes. Is it legal? Yes. Is it effed up? Yes. Right? FinFan's not wrong by saying that, they already make a crap ton of money. They brought in $1 billion. Billion. Taking a little chunk of a couple of $1 million is not gonna it's not gonna change their bottom line. But here's the problem: that's money someone made off of their idea. It's someone made off of their intellectual property. So while you are right, honestly, you and us, we're wrong. It's an intellectual property owned by somebody else. And once what they do with it, if they're an asshole about it, okay, right? We just have to live with that. It's messed up, but yeah. Lorraine Williams was the name. That's what Pumpkin Ghost put in the chat. Yep. Cameron says next year people could be playing a totally different RPG. Absolutely. I would suspect that we're going to get a lot of clones, or the personalities that already exist come out with their own rule set, and we're just going to diversify. I mean, choice is good. I don't mind it. Choice is good. I think it feels good for all of us to be under one umbrella. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition feels like a very large community that's kind of like a globular, like a big giant snowball. And that big snowball, you get to lob at people, feels good to be in there. Like, yeah, I'm gonna pop you in the face with my big ass snowball, right? But it don't feel bad that the tribe is splitting up, right? You're still welcome in the small, because our tribe can only, we're nomads, and we as nomads, we can't all cluster together. There's too many of us. We're gonna destroy the ecosystem. But if we split up into a small group of here and over here and over here, and then we just bop back and forth, that's already fine too. Z says I can see it already. DBJ running the race, kneecapping anyone who gets 2 inches too close with his trademark DBJ role-playing game baseball bat. Oh yeah, it's going to be wrapped in like those really dumb dice that you had, those older crumbly dice that you got back in like the mid 70s and 80s. You had to use a crayon to fill them in, and it would just be like scotch taped around the outside of the baseball bat. Oh yes, I'll be throwing like D4 caltrops in front of people. Oh man, you're not gonna. I'll be taking that race real slow. Anyway, Wayne says Lorraine Williams had to stop gaming at work. Gaming is playtime. TSR was losing money, requiring employees to focus time on making company work versus playtime is common sense. Yeah. Also, they weren't trying in any way to make a new system at that time, but make the current game company profitable. And see, that's how Hasbro works. Hasbro owns lots of intellectual property. G.I. Joe and I think Monopoly. They're a game company. They own gaming products, and they own the IP, and they march that IP out to people. They make some money, and when the money starts to come down, they pick their next IP, and it's like a revolving system, right? It's to make money. Okay, G.I. Joe's losing interest with Transformers or whatever. I don't know if it is Hasbro. There's Hasbro, there's Mattel, there's a bunch of them, but you get what I mean. Zamara says it's a fine line. A gaming company needs to work out those bugs, which means playing the game. And the closer you are to the start of that process, yeah. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, right? If you run a fast food company, wouldn't you want your employees, or at least someone taste testing your food before you put it out there? I think Ben and Jerry's was known back when Ben and Jerry owned it, that they were known for giving free ice cream to their employees and having them literally like eat it and fill out questionnaires about its quality and all that kind of stuff, and change it based on what they said. Okay, Z says, here we go. Z says, I will disagree with you there. Okay, here we go. I would disagree with you, DBJ. I don't want to be a nomad. I have ambitions of stealing some of WoTC's land. I will be a lord. Oh, man, I thought you were going to really punch me in the face with that one. That's all right. Oh, you guys are funny. But no, but the analogy fits, right? Like, I mean, Matt Colville already settled his own land, and Monty Cook has settled his own land, and Keith Baker settled his own land, right? I mean, it wouldn't take very much. Imagine if Eberron was its own. See, he couldn't use Eberron, but just imagine if Keith Baker's like, my Eberron will have its own gaming system, specifically for that world, right? It wouldn't be too far away, although Eberron's owned by WoTC, so it maybe that's a terrible one. I see now the whole message of this video under capitalism is it is my duty to take a brick to Wizards of the Coast kneecaps to protect D&D. I think I fueled the wrong emotion there. That's funny. They need to test their new mechanic, and she straight up stripped them of that ability by not allowing her employees to work the way they are accustomed to and how they thrive there. Yeah, taste testing. Different than acting as if the buffet was open and lunchtime lasts 3 hours. Yeah. I mean, honestly, you can't put out a product without knowing what the quality of that product is. So I think they could have. Here's the thing about being a boss, right? You have to know what works, and you got to get productivity out of your employees. What do? How do you balance that? And as a boss, you got to make the tough decisions. And sometimes a tough decision might be letting paid employees do things on the clock versus you need to stop playing and get the hell back to work and start writing, which is what I was talking about the challenge yesterday about why terrible writers are hired in Hollywood. It's because terrible writers write all the time. They've got 16 scripts, all of them terrible, and they show it to an executive, and the executive goes, 16, number 15, damn, this is all you got? And then the brilliant person's in the corner going, man, they all suck. And the executive turns to that brilliant person and goes, well, what have you written? Well, I mean, I'm still working on it, and I don't know. Executive cuts him off and goes, produce number 3. Fine, just go ahead. Plot holes and all, whatever. Just go ahead. It's because they work. So FidFan says that's the problem with the IP system. The company is not a person. It did nothing creative. It just takes advantage of network effects to monopolize. We all suffer for lack of competition. Well, yes and yes. But that's what a business is. Like, why is it? Shouldn't surprise us. They own the IP, so why would that surprise us? I do feel like with a lack of competition, and that's our own fault, which is my initial assessment. The fact that Wizards of the Coast is doing this through Hasbro is a good thing. It's hurting us, and it's a good thing. Now we realize, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be focusing all of our attention on one company with one IP and then making our living and our livelihood and our creativity based on that. Nah, we've got other choices. We could do our own thing. We could do our own thing way over here. And if other large companies like Hasbro wisen up and go, maybe it would be better to work with them in a more favorable mechanism. So while FinFan, I'm jokingly disagreeing with you in a sense of I'm agreeing with you, but I'm going at it from a different angle. Like, yeah, we're all mad. Cam's mad. It was like, this sucks, man. This is stupid. You're right, but it's always been theirs. It's always been their right to do that. The kid with the football that gets mad and says, I'm taking it home. Asinine, sure, but whatever. It's their right. They can do whatever they want to, right? Yeah. Oh, man. All right, guys. We're going well past this hour here. So, guys, I got to thank you guys for just being part of the show. Thank you guys for just being here in general, just returning after like a year and a couple of months. I'm just amazed by that. It makes me feel good. It makes me want to do this, which is why, even though I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, I'll get over it. But so thank you for those of you around the world, especially here in the States, up at the crack of dawn, up late at night, just to be part of this open discussion. Thank you guys for being co-hosts of this podcast. I really appreciate it. I know this show goes on long, but hey, this is our little niche. This is our way to let everything out. By the way, don't feel like you need to agree with me. I just like to set my argument up and then put it out there in the field. I understand right now our emotions are, we're butthurt right now. And as a third party creator myself, I'm also thinking like, we need to get out of this, right? Like, there's got to be another way of doing this. So, and other ways of being part of the community, making money, making products, being creative. A lot of people are going to OSR and going, yeah, I don't need a license to make OSR material at all, right? So anyway, guys, thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Bye.